feel when your numbers go up and they hear you. They start following your message cause they feel you. Haters in the rear view wanna ruin plans. Don't be startled, they just low-key fans. They tight like bands on the fresh stack. Knowing Rolo runs the city, bringing hip-hop back for the 51st year with my loquacious bands. Now this ain't no love.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the Rolo Runs the City podcast. I am your host, Rolo, and I am back this week again for episode 3. And this week we're going to be talking about self-sabotage. Yes, self-sabotage, it is a real thing. It does happen. It happens to many people. It happens for various reasons. Unfortunately, they always say that you can be your worst enemy, and often cases, that's the absolute truth. So we're going to start off with talking about self-sabotage. And unfortunately, we subject ourselves to this, and it happens to deal with the fact that we're scared of failure. In fact, sometimes some of us self-sabotage because we're scared of succeeding. And I know a lot of times whenever we're in a winning situation, we feel like we're not deserving. So what do? We go back to our default. And unfortunately, a lot of times, whatever emotional place that we currently reside at or we're used to residing at is what we're actually going to go back to. So if you're used to things not working out well in your life and things are working out absolutely great, it's almost like you're expecting something bad to happen. And when it doesn't happen, you pretty much go ahead and execute it yourself. And that's when self-sabotage comes in. And I know, like, for instance, with me, I went through it with injury. I knew I was injured. And like I said, last month, I ran a marathon knowing that I was injured, and I shouldn't have ran that marathon, and I was injured. But I said, no, I can do it. And of course, you have the mindset to try to get things done because that's what you want to do. Whatever you start, you finish. I wasn't even at the start line yet, but, I made that decision to go ahead and get this marathon going. And it got me, So I'm not saying that I was self-sabotaging because I was getting away from trying to succeed. I just did too much to where my body wasn't cooperating. And I knew that it wouldn't cooperate, but I still pushed the envelope anyway. So, we could self-sabotage like that, of course, with injury. Of course, business decisions, when you're not used to being successful and you see a little success, unfortunately, a lot of people are saying, well, the downturn is coming. And a lot of times you are the reason for the downturn. And not even realizing it, things start to compound. Next thing you know, you start making bad decisions, things go down. People like, for example, for me, I know that I am pushing to get an album done. And like I said on my last episode, I couldn't even sit down to even write. So then that way I can go ahead and get the process of this album going. And that was a form of self-sabotage because I know that there's things that I'm trying to get done and I'm trying to execute. However, if you're not putting yourself in the best possible position and you know that you can avoid it, but you just kind of bullheaded about things anyway, and you just want to be monolithic about getting things done a certain way, sometimes you end up really jacking yourself up and, you really screw yourself over. So you definitely don't want to do that, but I mean, the way I look at it is we need to make sure that we make better sound decisions. Sometimes we get in our own way. A lot of times we get in our own way, and I think, I don't even remember if it was a Chinese proverb or whatnot, but I do know that there's a saying that states that if you can't be stopped if there's no enemy within. So take that for what it's worth. Yeah, you got to recognize self-sabotage. I mean, a lot of times people procrastinate. A lot of people overthink instead of making a decision. And I always say it all the time in school, whether if it's elementary, middle, high school, there definitely needs to be a course on decision making. And the reason why I say that is because I'm always around people who just don't want to make a decision. And sometimes it's like one or two things. You know, when we're in the military, they train us to make sound decisions. They say, hey, we got to clear this room. One or two things are going to happen. We're going to kick it. The door's got a possible explosive behind it. We might end up getting lit up. Or we're going to be able to clear the room. But a decision needs to be made. And I think a lot of times, unfortunately, people get, the paralysis of just overthinking. And that is one of the greatest forms of self-sabotage. Let's not forget negative self-talk. For me personally, something that I do, I go through affirmations every day. I know it sounds kind of corny and cliche, but it actually does help me get through the day. And just repeating things in the morning, kind of priming myself, getting ready for the day, getting ready to go. In fact, I have affirmations that are printed out for my son on his mirror in his, in his room. And he reads them throughout the day. He'll read it once he gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning. He reads it again during lunch. He reads it after dismissal. And it's just programming him to understand that it's not so much about the positive, the power of positive thinking, but it's all about searching and trying to get the outcome that you want. So I think that's absolutely imperative to get done. And, like I said, just, bad habits will take you out the game, And people, unfortunately, they fear success as much as they feel failure because of the fact that, like I harped on earlier, that they're in a situation where they're being absolutely successful and they're scared of losing it all. And the way a lot of people think is, well, if I don't have anything, I don't have anything to lose. So no big deal. But once the success comes, man, there's something to lose at that point. So, you definitely want to make sure that you are doing your due diligence on getting your mind right to just think about success, even if failure is the inevitable. At the end of the day, so is taxes, so is death. But we do what we can to abide by the law and pay those taxes. And even though Father Time gets us all, we're definitely giving him a run for his money. So, take that as you will, of course. But, but how do you break free from that? You have to really have some great self-awareness. You have to start identifying the patterns. So, for instance, with me, right, I notice whenever I'm like, I got to tighten, up and everything. I notice I'm gaining a few pounds. Let me go ahead and do what needs to get done. And, of course, it's been a little harder as of recent, being the fact that I have been off of my game due to the injury, so I can't really pound the pavement the way I want to and make sure that I stay in shape. Not only that, but to keep my pounds off. But I notice whenever I'm losing weight, and I see that I'm losing weight, I'm like, okay, I'm losing weight, but, in a good way, very healthy, not losing muscle or anything like that, just the unnecessary fat that nobody wants, So what happens with me is I see a magic number on the scale. I'm like, okay, I'm going to hit this number and then I'm going to get below it. And every time it psychs me out. I end up making bad decisions. I end up eating a crap load of candy or just going to eat 2-3 times out of the week outside, what I'm not supposed to do, because we all know that nobody's cooking out there in these restaurants with pure olive oil and healthy coconut oils and things of that nature. No, they're using the cheap crap like vegetable or canola, and that is obviously packing on the pounds. So I notice that's one of my habits, and whenever I see that I'm in that habit, I said, whoa, I got to stop a little bit now. So now I'm doing a little better in reference to recognizing those patterns of, okay, I've hit a certain weight, and it's like I created my own plateau. So I'm like, nope, the plateau's in my mind. I got to get rid of it so then that way I can go ahead and get the goal that needs to be achieved. But anyway, but that's just that's definitely one of those things that'll definitely get you. If you know how to identify the patterns, you can definitely try to put some safeguards So then that way you can get over that hump. Okay. And you always have to think about discipline over motivation. Motivation, I hate to say that. People say, oh, motivation is crap. Motivation is crap. But, at the end of the day, people say, oh, yeah, you got motivation. You're motivated now, but then you don't want to do it. I don't think motivation is crap. I mean, motivation is very similar to taking a shower. I mean, just because motivation wears off doesn't mean you don't have to renew the motivation. You can renew the motivation, and motivation is a great thing. It's just like taking a shower. I showered tonight. I'm going to shower before I hit the sack, and I'm going to shower when I get up. So, at the end of the day, I could say, taking a shower is crap, but we still got to renew ourselves anyway and wash ourselves. So let's not discount motivation. I mean, motivational spark when it's there, but you have to think about this all the time. Whenever you don't feel the motivation not being there and you're not able to actually execute the way you want to, that's when your discipline has to come into play. So we definitely want to make sure that we maintain that discipline, because when it does wane and that motivation is dissipating, you definitely want to be able to rely on that discipline, So you also want to keep your environment in check as well, who you're surrounding yourself by. If you're surrounding yourself or talking to or consuming a whole bunch of crap, you see a whole bunch of crap on Instagram that's not realistic, it's not real, a whole bunch of stuff in reference to trends, and everybody wants to hop on a trend, and everybody wants to be looked at and seem like, that they're him or she's her. At the end of the day, it's like, for me, the trends, it doesn't show any originality, and it just sidetracks everything that you're trying to get done. So you have to keep that in check. Just like you would do with your food, just like you would do with your refrigerator, whatever junk you got in there, you got to get rid of it. It's the same thing with the content that you consume. Whether it be traditional cable, of course, I'm a cord cutter. I don't believe in it. But, a lot of times people put on CNN, constant negative news, things of that nature. They're getting caught up with the political world and all the hoopla and, oh, what's so-and-so going to do? Because they're making decisions now. And what is she going to do now that she's in charge? You know what? At the end of the day, you have to be in charge of your own life. And self-sabotage also comes in the form of media. Whatever you consume will actually control your thoughts. And God has blessed you with the ability to think and free will, and that's something that needs to be desperately exercised. But, make sure, you visualize yourself winning. You don't want to be in a situation where you see yourself losing. And that's the problem with social media nowadays. Everybody's too busy trying to compare themselves to, whatever heavy top influencer. Heck, they even comparing themselves to their peers or to their family or people they grew up with. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. If you're following somebody, right, you guys know each other, whatever. And you guys are consuming each other's content. Like, it's like for me, for instance, if I follow some friends, some family, whatever, I see pictures, family pictures. I love them, because I'm a family man. So I'm all about family. I'm all about growth. I'm all about taking care of your own. And just because you have people that you may follow, a lot of these folks, a lot of times, they're following somebody and they're envying their situation. They could be possibly envying their financial success, their family dynamic, whatever. I'm going to be honest with you. That's a loser's mentality. Okay? At the end of the day, the way I look at it, I'm all about congratulating everybody who's trying to be successful in this life. Whether if you want to be a good parent, whether if you want to be a businessman, businesswoman, really take care of yourself in reference to your health, because of course health is wealth. I'm all for that. But for me, I'll be honest with you, and I feel like it's just good karma that goes into the earth. If I see somebody's picture and I like it, of course, which I like a lot of my folks' pictures anyway that I actually, when I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling on my feed, I like them because that's just me. But to be honest with you, you've got a whole bunch of people that they're lurking on folks' pages if they don't follow them. And if they do follow them, they're looking at their pages, which, they're pictures that come on their feed and on their timeline. And you see it. And you're so envious because of the fact that you're losing in life. And it's like, nobody knows you're losing, but you know you're losing. So you're looking at your folks' stuff, whether it's a good friend of yours, family, whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm not double tapping that. You're not double tapping what? The fact that your best friend may love the hell out of his wife and has a picture with his wife, or he's trying to do right by his child, or he's at his son's graduation, or, they're celebrating a new business merger, and you don't like that because why? Because you know them intimately? Because of the fact that you know this person, you guys come from the same place, and one person decided success and you decided to sit on your ass and not do anything? That's nobody's fault but your own. At the end of the day, you have to take accountability. That is the greatest form of self-sabotage, is the fact that you can't admit to yourself that it's like, man, I'm lacking. Okay, I need to do better. Because I'm going to tell you like this, when you congratulate, you end up participating. That's why they say, don't hate, congratulate. And when you congratulate, you end up in the participation part. Congratulate, participate. That's just the way that goes. And next thing you know, you have this momentum going for you. But a whole lot of people have this crazy sense. And I've noticed that majority of the people that do reach out to me, that do congratulate me, that say, hey, you're doing really well, that you're doing this and that. I'm just talking on a personal aspect here. They're not family, they're not friends, they're strangers. But I guess maybe that's because of the fact that I didn't grow up with them. We didn't come from the same place. We don't come from the same bloodline. So maybe they feel a little bit more at ease and comfortable to actually give me those flowers. And I don't do... Okay, how can I put this? All right, we're going to put it this way. For me, I love to see my people winning. I love to see everyone winning. You know who I love to see winning the most? Young people. Because at the end of the day, I know those young folks are the ones that are going to actually take care of us in the future. So I love to congratulate people. I don't know. I believe there's a term. I don't know what the term is. But I've noticed that I get a fulfillment and I get this inner joy when I see people that I know succeeding. It's a beautiful thing. And it's something that is the total opposite of self-sabotage. So what I'm trying to say is, whenever you're hitting this roadblock and you're wondering, why am I not getting this love? Why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing that? You're not feeling fulfilled. Think about the energy that you're projecting out into the world, and you're just being a damn hater. But that goes, that goes without being said. But I had to say it anyway. So there you have it. But you have to stick to a system. You have to have these habits. You cannot be controlled by feelings. And the reason why I say that you can't be controlled by feelings is because at the end of your feelings is despair. And if you're controlled by your feelings, you're not going to get anything done. You're not going to take care of your workouts. You're not going to take care of your business. You're not going to go ahead and read and learn the way you want to, because you are becoming a slave to your feelings. And at the end of your feelings is despair. So my recommendation to you is to be very pragmatic and logical and think with sense. Remember, all thoughts need to come from the cerebral, not from your heart. Okay? Moving on. You have to feed your mind. I told you, stay away from CNN, constant negative news, things of that nature. Be careful with what you're looking at, because of the fact that it can be a detriment to you. You want to make sure that you're listening to positive podcasts, ways of getting better. Listen to my podcast, read books, consume content that fuels growth. If you're doing that, you're definitely on your way to getting away from self-sabotage, And that's the greatest way to cut out the noise. Limit your time on social media. If you're consuming social media, make sure it's content that you want to consume. Who gives a damn about some jackass acting like he's got a morning routine that he can't even live up to, and he's getting evicted out of his own damn apartment? But yet, he's trying to stunt, and he's trying to act like he's really doing big things, when in actuality, all he did was put on a movie for you. At the end of the day, understand, whatever social media is showing you is they're trying to show you the highlight reel of what one person is trying to give you. That person ain't showing you his struggles. He ain't showing you, or she's not showing you they're behind on their bills. So in actuality, clean up your content, do what you're supposed to do, feed your mind with nourishing things. At the end of the day, you're not going to live on pizza and ice cream. You're going to make sure that you have vegetables, you're eating clean meats. If you're a vegetarian, you're doing your plant-based thing. You're doing the best you can to consume your water. You're not getting drunk, drinking nothing but alcohol for the next 2-3 weeks, because of the fact that that in order to survive, you have to make sure that you're putting things in your body that make you thrive. And that's the same thing that you have to do whenever you're consuming content, especially on social media. But you want to do hard things daily. If you're not growing, you're dying. So make sure that you're doing all that you can when you can, because I'm a firm believer in how you do anything is how you do everything. So you have to make sure that you're doing all that you can. And if your name is attached to a project, make sure that you have some validity behind it. Because I'll tell you one thing, if it's me, the way that I approach things, if Rolo's name is on that project, you know that you're getting the best quality. I am not only overselling, but I am over-delivering. That's just what it is. So let's just make sure that we're doing that as well. Another great way to do that and get rid of the self-sabotaging behavior. Make sure you're having great accountability, of course. But the best thing that you could do is just, program yourself for success, man. You know what I mean? You have to, like I said, declutter your mind. Make sure you watch what you're feeding your mind. Also, declutter your space. If you have a mess around you and you're looking, you said, damn, I don't even know where the bed stops and the floor begins because you got piles of laundry on the floor, whether dirty or clean, you don't know. The best way that you could do is declutter your space. That helps the decluttering of the mind as well. So if you have a messy space around you, you're going to have a messy mindset. So let's make sure that we're always taking care of those things as well. And always try to set up ways for you to always grow. I mean, if you have a book, keep the book on your desk. That way, it doesn't hurt to read about 5 or 6 pages before you call it a night. That's one of those great things to do. I know that before I go to bed, I always make sure that I try to make sure that I read a few pages. Right now, I'm reading Jocko Willink's Discipline Over Freedom, which is a pretty good book. I like how it is. It's set up like a field manual, like if you were reading a field manual from the military, like stuff that I was accustomed to reading in back in the Army. So I thought it was it's a pretty good read. I'm almost done with the book, so definitely a lot of great things. Just always put yourself in a situation where you want to thrive and you want to win. And if you've been avoiding the gym and you got to go to the gym, put the gym bag by the door, man. Put the shoes there. That way, on your way to work, I got to go get my workout in. Right after work, no excuse. Gym bag's by the door, pick it up, take yourself out. You know what I mean? So then that way you can get that done. Like for me, for instance, right? There's times where I'm like, man, I really don't feel like recording this podcast today. But what do? The night before, I set everything up so then that way I'm like, no excuses, got to come in here, deliver the message. At the end of the day, I am a human being as well. I am not a machine, although I try to operate as one, but we know that at the end of the day, humans feel. And like what I said earlier, feelings lead to despair. So at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to let out my message to you guys and get you guys going. And just track your progress. It's always good to make sure that you're always making the necessary adjustments. You definitely want to make sure that you write everything down. It's good to have a journal. And remember, data over drama. So at the end of the day, regardless of what your feelings may have been about something, numbers don't lie. And people say, oh, no, sometimes numbers lie. No, numbers don't lie. People lie, numbers don't. So make sure that you're being very data-driven, trying to write everything down. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, make sure that you have some validity behind it in reference to the numbers. Okay? So I just want you guys to know that life is whatever you make it, but you have to get out of your own way. If you don't get out of your own way, you will never live the life that you were destined to live. That's just the truth, you know? So I challenge you guys, man, you know, pick one self-sabotaging behavior and replace it today. So I'm going to tell you, like with me, I look at that scale. If I am looking at that scale and I say, man, okay, this is the number I can't get past, but I'm going to get past it this week. I'm not going to think about that. At the end of the day, I'm always thinking about the next week. And, oh, man, I got to keep it clean, this, and that. I'm just going to do what I can to make it to the next day and keep on stacking it brick by brick by brick till I have what? The mansion. We talked about that last week. You guys already know what I'm referencing. Okay? But to be honest with you guys, man, it's not an easy task to quit self-sabotaging behavior. However, it can be done. Nothing is impossible. So you have to make sure that you're very diligent on your practices and make sure that you're getting the job done. At the end of the day, you have to do your job, and your job is to make sure that you deliver on your promises. Because at the end of the day, if you don't, all you're doing is hurting your credit score with yourself. And the reason why I say that is because if you think you're BS, the outside world definitely thinks it. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence to make things happen at all costs. But anyway, this is the episode for this week. And of course, I just wanted to talk about self-sabotage because it happens quite often to everybody, including myself. I am no robot. I am a human being, and I am well aware of the things that I go through. But at the end of the day, as long as you're trying to improve and trying to be the best version of yourself and be that 5.6.0 version of yourself, because of course we have many versions of ourselves that we try to evolve into. As long as you get away from the 1.0, you're doing the right thing. But anyway, this is Rolo, and I am the host of Rolo Runs the City podcast. If you guys want to hit me up, you guys feel free to hit me up at rolorunstthecity@gmail.com. You got my social medias, Facebook and Instagram at Rolo Runs the City Podcast, also at Rolo Runs the City Music. And you could also check me out and check out all my things on rolorunstthecity.com. Anyway, y'all take care, Godspeed, and like we always end, baby, be the goat, never a sheep, and don't sleep on your dreams. Peace.